Hey everyone, today's guest is Juan Felipe, an award-winning Colombian visual and product designer based in Berlin, Germany, actually, where our headquarters is. And he has over 10 years of experience across the ups and downs of startup life, something probably a lot of you are looking forward to hearing about. In his free time, Juan does a lot of design mentoring, which will be a big part of our conversation. And in 2024, he was listed as part of the top 100 ADP list mentors in 2024. So if you're looking for those long-lasting tips on building a strong portfolio, reaching those potential clients, reaching your potential audience, this is a conversation for you. So on that note, with portfolio building, that's going to be the first area we talk about. And my question to you, just to dive right in, is what single piece of advice, I know that's really difficult to kind of just pinpoint one thing, but what single piece of advice would you give to a new designer or new designers that are seeking to develop the right skills so that they can showcase them in the portfolio? And I think some context for this question specifically is around that last bit of showcasing the skills, because a lot of people in a portfolio will simply show graphics, they'll simply show perhaps mock-ups, perhaps it's video, whatever it is. It's kind of hard to show off skill. So what I think I'm looking for is that advice for new designers to develop the right skills, and then that transitions in their portfolio. So hopefully you can decipher that a little bit.
Yeah, okay, that's already kind of a scary question, right? I think what, as a junior designer or somebody studying, trying to build a portfolio, it's always about, I remember for me it was questioning myself if I should start building my style or my language, or how am I
Okay.
going to be recognized when I do my work. If people see my work, will they know that that's Juan Felipe? And I was worrying a little bit too much on that. What I notice now, like after years of working and also trying to work on my own style, that takes time. So how do you manage to start um, building something that you in the end feel proud of? I think that's something that should be always something that you're aiming for,
Mm.
and you should be focusing on approaching projects in a way that you feel always a bit uncomfortable on the project that you're doing. That's on the technical side, right? So if you're gonna pick up animation, or you're gonna pick up doing some typographic posters, uh, try to try to do them with techniques and using references that you know that you might not exactly reach what you want, but that you know you're gonna be like sweating through it, that you're gonna be uncomfortable and feeling that you can always do it better. And that helps you in developing your skills as much as you can, right? In I put as an example, when I'm doing animation, I love animation, but I, I don't know, my skills are not there yet. But I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed that I have figured out shortcuts by myself that have in eventually evolved into giving that style, giving like that flavor of Juan Felipe's work. And once you start going through all of this, you notice that you're being true to your voice and you're being authentic in the way that you're approaching your work. Rather than doing tutorials and follow them, I would say try to follow the tutorial and just try to put a spin that interests you. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be the key to enable your work to feel more yours and to feel probably more distinct to the people who are going to see it.
Yes. And when we're thinking a little bit more practically about what that looks like visually, what the narrative is to what people will see on your portfolio, what I've heard a lot and would love to know your thoughts on this is what I've heard a lot is, don't just send somebody a portfolio or put up your portfolio on your website and it's just all, they're all just simply graphics. There's no narrative. There's no basically like case study-esque component to it. So there's no this was the pain point, this is how I solved it. So in that same kind of thread, is that something that you would suggest visually sharing storytelling in the portfolio? So in this example that you've just given, example, I sought out to create X, Y, and Z,
Hmm.
but I did it through accomplishing, this shortcut and this blah blah blah, and it saved X amount of hours. Like, you know what I mean? Like in a more practical sense, like
Yeah.
what does that become visually to a client or your audience looking at it?
Yeah, I think it depends, like in the field that you're in. The
Okay.
one that I have the most experience in would be like product design or branding. And yes, you want to fulfill the steps of the story for each of these sectors, right? For product
Yeah.
design, you might
Sure.
want to talk about outcomes and numbers, which a lot of people are
Yeah.
very interested in. For
Sure.
branding, yeah, probably also you want to have numbers. But the important thing is that you're able to escape the usual flow of a lot of other portfolios. What I've seen, what I've seen like going through so many portfolios is a lot of them are imitating each other, and they start
Oh.
saying
Okay.
the things that I don't know some thought leader in design was saying, and maybe they go into their portfolio and they try to say, okay, this person describes himself themselves as X and Y, and they present their projects as X and Y, and that's useful up to a point, because then you're just gonna be as flat as the rest. Everybody's imitating the same guy. Everybody is trying to do the design work as the leader inside that sector. So what I would push, what I think helps a lot is, depends on the case again. But I think if you are able to go into the detail and explain me why do you care so much about those little details, it helps you come through as showing what you care about the design process.
Mm.
If it's, I don't know, if you're designing some packaging and you particularly spend a lot of time choosing the paper, it's something that you like, right? Like you
Yeah.
are a lot into materials.
Yeah.
What you want to do is to transfer this interest. You want to be clear about your passion within the design process. And if you decide to spend a little bit longer, and maybe, I don't know, you make a chart comparison of why do you use this weight of paper versus this, and why this was the best outcome for you, then you're showing yourself as a designer that understands, or that at least shows that applies some value to a certain step of the process, which means that also helps you distinguish yourself in the specialization that you're in, or at least within your taste and your style.
Okay. 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 That's good advice. Now, you said something earlier that has raised a follow-up question that I have for you. You said that you've reviewed a lot of portfolios, and that's actually something you'll be doing for our community, which we can talk about a little bit later. And I'll have links for all that stuff down in the description, so all of you watching can make sure you're signed up for the right place. Or if you're listening on Spotify, you can go check that out as well. But you mentioned having reviewed these portfolios, you started to notice some things like repetition or copying.
Mhm.
So I think it's fair to assume that that's probably one major or critical error or a pitfall or a trap. So would you mind listing a few other kind of mistakes that you see people making when they're approaching their portfolio or they're trying to curate it or show it, yeah, if you could just list a few of them to get our listeners' minds in a right place,
Mhm.
saying, okay, just, well, don't do this. Definitely don't do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've seen across um, Behance, for example,
Mhm.
is I see a lot of people posting their tutorials. Like I completed a tutorial. I've been
Oh,
studying like
interesting.
recently some 3D stuff. So I've been doing from these guys called Cabeza Patata, and I went onto Behance and I started checking, and all of them, I started seeing like, oh, I'm looking to 3D characters. Then I started seeing like the same characters that I was working on, and these are listed as projects, as completed projects on your 3D portfolio, or these type of things. And if you're gonna do a tutorial, I would say like everybody has done a tutorial. Everybody who has seen the tutorial knows that you're not gonna do it any different from them, from what
The
everybody
outcome
has
is
been
going to be
practicing.
the same as if someone else had done it. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're gonna do a tutorial, do the same thing as what I was saying earlier. Like grab that technique, grab that approach, and if it's not gonna be a bunny that you're gonna do a character, at least do an elephant,
Yeah. Something else.
following those principles. That way, like at least your portfolio feels a little bit more varied, and you're also pushing yourself towards something different.
What would you say is maybe the second, or I guess that would be the second. What would you say maybe is like the third biggest kind of issue or mistake in portfolio building that you've seen?
Of one thing that I see quite frequently is the way people choose to label themselves. How do they present themselves? I see it a lot, and that this is like already a joke for me when you go into a portfolio looking into product design, and it's I am Juan Felipe, a designer in between the intersection of technology and art, or this type of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like I've seen it a million times, and what I push for, especially when I'm reviewing those portfolio, is just write, do yourself a favor and write about yourself on a
yeah.
Google Doc, and write one page, then try to rewrite that same page until it comes naturally. You want to talk about
Mm,
yourself as naturally as possible. What helps you stand out is that authenticity, that personality of yours. I also don't want to say like, oh yeah, be yourself, but there are opinions as a designer. I think you gotta have a lot of opinions, and you gotta be like stand by those opinions, but also
right.
support them. So if you're
Yeah.
gonna say, I think Comic Sans is the worst, then don't show that Comic Sans goes across all of your design. If you are very much into serif typography, right?
Yeah.
Then I would expect that the way that you talk about serifs, or the style sort of matches what you're presenting yourself as, but also you talk about yourself based on the things that you're presenting.
Yeah.
Um,
It sounds like, oh, sorry. Did you have one more thought there?
no, that was all.
Okay. Yeah. It sounds like there's a lot of, I mean, that's also an aspect of copying. This whole like, I agree. I've seen that probably 1,000 times. I'm a this, and I'm in at the intersection of like human and technology. Right. I see
Yeah,
that all
yeah.
over the place. So I think that maybe is a good segue into my kind of second category of question here, which I just want to talk about AI a little bit. I know you have some opinions and some thoughts on this, and I would love to get into it. So, in your view, and remember, everyone, we're kind of talking about right now. At least we're talking about portfolio building. We're talking about maybe new or growing designers. So, in your view, how does relying on AI, so how does relying on things like AI tools, generators,
Mhm.
how does that risk undermining a designer's development? So you're going to
Yeah.
rely on these tools um, too early. That's probably another key thing. Is like I don't want to necessarily say don't ever, but certainly early in creating and curating. Like, how does relying on the AI undermine that development?
Yeah, I got a lot of opinions about AI, but this one in particular on your development of skills within
Yeah.
as a designer. I think there are some key points.
Hmm.
What happens with AI is like the way that that it works is that it sort of calculates what are the closest things to what you're saying and flattens out and says, for example, you're looking for an anime tiger, and it's gonna take Dragon Ball, and it's gonna take Naruto, and then it's gonna condense it into an average. So it
Hmm.
sort of flattens the style of each of them just to make sure that you get the anime, what generally means anime. What happens with this is that, yeah, it's okay to use it like as a reference, or
Mm.
as a way to spark ideas or start working onto something. But when you rely too much specifically in style, like in flavor, in that yeah, that spark that you want to extract out of your work, it's not gonna help you stand out, in the sense that
Yeah.
if it's flattened out, like you don't have that style, and you don't entirely recognize what makes this particular style distinctive.
Sure.
Um, I think I have, yeah. So if you rely too much on it early on, your taste, which is something that I think it needs to be cultivated, you have to be very very conscious about the things that you consume, like the media you consume, the type of things that you spend time studying. So you gotta start curating first your taste, so that you can later understand what's good and what's not so good.
Mm,
Now, if you're going to use AI, most of the time it's just going to be the average in terms of taste. And when
okay.
everything is average, you don't get to stand out that much.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. I've never heard it really talked about in that specific way because I think what a lot of people not well, I don't know that I just said a lot of people. I don't even know who I'm talking about. But let's just say a lot of gurus or perhaps influencers would suggest the opposite of what you would
Mhm.
say, and that the AI will actually help them stand out more. I think
Yeah.
I see this probably most of the time in like video editing as like let the AI edit this video for me or whatever, which I think can certainly be helpful. For example, we use an amazing tool called Autopod for our podcasts. And what that'll
Mhm.
actually do is it'll take your shot and it'll take my shot and it'll automatically jut it back and forth depending on who's talking. I don't need the editors to do that anymore. I can let AI do that, but that's a specific
Mhm.
use case. Whereas I think what you're saying is certainly much more applicable and approachable in saying this AI is going to, on average, spit out whatever the combination of the industry, whatever the industry believes is anime or manga or kawaii or whatever it is, and
Mhm.
give you something that's generic or average. Now, it may be, it may stand out to you because you don't know how to draw that thing, but perhaps to the audience it doesn't. So I've never really heard it talked about it like that because I think we're trained to hear the opposite, which is like, oh, use AI to help you stand out, you know? But another thing that I was thinking just now when you were speaking was I think where the danger is like just kind of passing off AI as your own work, which is, you know, can
Mhm.
be the danger that you're talking about, which is just I'm just going to synthesize and take all of this stuff and then it's like, look at what I did. When actuality, you didn't that's not really using the AI as a tool. And I think what you said is key about using it as inspiration or using it for ideation, which we do a lot
Mhm.
of. I mean, I certainly have done that a lot of. I mean, you can almost develop full example. I was working on a newspaper like ad tutorial, basically how to make a vintage esque ad tutorial. And out of curiosity, I just asked Flux, "Can you show me a vintage newspaper layout?" Now it's gibberish. There's nothing happening in it, but what the layout actually looks pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
It's as inspiration. So yeah, maybe just as a follow up to this, what how how can we allow people to have the right mindset on AI? Like, just could you maybe just go a little bit more in depth on how you think about it as like a tool or an aid and less of something to rely on? Because I think the relying on is the part that's where the danger
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, like overall, in terms AI, the things that it can do, like video editing, there are some crazy things, right? Like closed captions,
Sure.
all this.
Yeah.
And but what happens with generative AI is that yeah, the result is very quickly. Usually,
Yes.
you just get like 4K, whatever you want. So
Hmm.
it's impressive. But if you're gonna hand over this type of work, then you're gonna what happens is this is the brand that you're building. The way that you're portraying yourself as the type of skills that you
Mm.
have is the work that you show. It's perfectly fine if what you want to do is maybe you want to manage clients like very quickly. You know that AI is the way to do it. Maybe that's your job, so it's fine. But when you're trying to build like a portfolio and evolve within your career and learn skills for in favor of your storytelling and develop skills to use design in a different way, you gotta is, start using it. Yes, if you want as reference,
Mm.
it's good to understand like what's the average, what's like the generic base, so that you can build up from that. If you see like I've seen a lot when you see like cyberpunk a image, if it's not purple and pink, then it's not AI. You would tell. So you start from there. You see, okay, like the average is purple and pink. How about I try a cyberpunk that uses, I don't know, orange and
Green. Yeah.
and green. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you go like, oh, maybe is a jungle futuristic type of thing. Now you're already building something. You're telling a different story, and you can use this palette differently within the same context. Yes, inspired by the very basic components of the concept that you were exploring initially. If you manage to build it, use it like a stepping stone, at least to something to
Mm.
start kicking out the generic bits. I think you'll be able to build something that stands out. Why? Because you now know what's the average.
Right. Yes. And I think that's the mindset is more of a stepping stone. Now I know we have a lot of print on demand sellers, for example. They may not be watching this particular video because this is a little bit more geared towards professional design, but they're using their AI for things like
Mhm.
merchandise, and perhaps they can kind of tune it in and get it consistent with the style that they want for like merch or something like that. But what I'm hearing you saying is certainly much more advantageous for developing designers, because where I see the potential trap or danger is in relying on AI so much that you don't ever like learn anything.
Mhm.
And like you said earlier, if you said your job is to like pump out specific things to clients really, really fast, and the average is always fine, like the average is always standard for them, then perhaps that's fine. But I think that you want to use it as a stepping stone, as a kind of as a reference guide in the beginning, so that
Mhm.
you can get better and do something else with it. So, in that in mind, I mean, do you have any other kind of glaring or major trap or pitfall that you think AI or generative AI might pose um, to someone who's developing their skills? And if
Mhm.
so, or if not, like how would you balance that with like continuing to like learn your hands-on skills, developing as a
Yeah.
designer?
Yeah, I'm thinking now within like the context of being in a team, like within a company
Okay.
that has certain design focus parts. Probably as a freelancer, it could happen. But when you rely too much on the on the I wouldn't call it easy road, but on the least friction road, then you lose practice. When you jump onto a design team, you're always problem solving every day, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes you just have to no, I need an editable file that needs to be delivered to the next team so that they can do what they have to do. And by not exploring early on the way that you can interact with different tools, I don't know, with Figma, with Photoshop, with Kittl, with anything else that you can think of, Blender, and relying on doing things like via AI, you might be hindering some key aspects of
Mm.
that that transfer of files, the transfer of the work that you're doing,
Oh,
and you're
right.
gonna be like you're gonna get in the way, right? If I'm
Yes.
masking everything by AI on an After Effects shot, maybe I completely don't know how the process works. I'm gonna
Exactly.
get into the team and I'm gonna make everything slower, which means that the next person who picks up my work is gonna have a hard time, and
Another hard time. Yeah.
I'm gonna be messing up with their day.
Yeah, so it's this kind of like there's no universal language anymore, or at least the universal language that you're trying to pass off is not the language that everybody else understands. And by that, your example
Mhm.
with After Effects files or layered files or things like this, there's
Yeah.
no cohesiveness in the language. So I think that's really good. That makes a lot of sense. So I want to hone in on the authenticity part of this here for just a second and
Mhm.
ask you. Um, like what does authentic design look like to you, and
Yeah.
how can new or again growing creatives, designers, even artists, perhaps I would say this is valuable for them as well,
Mhm.
how can they cultivate that authenticity that is shown in their portfolio? So yeah, what does it look like to you?
Yeah, that's quite difficult. I think part of what helps you feel comfortable with the work that you're doing is, yeah, you can be authentic by saying that yes, I love anime, therefore everything I do looks like anime. That works in a certain context of design, but probably if you want to do I love anime, but I'm a product designer, so how can I make it stand, how can I show this type of authenticity in my work? I gotta start curating the stuff that I like. And part of what brings you to understand your voice is when you try to clash the things that you enjoy.
Hmm.
Like recently, I've been trying to learn about fashion and clothes and how do you
Okay.
sew things into I don't know,
Okay.
a cap. But I also enjoy a lot. working on vectors. So how about I try to put them together? Maybe this exploration will bring something that it feels unfit in the beginning,
Mm,
but through my opinion, through my work, through the way that I approach it, there's gonna come out something else that maybe not a lot of people are doing. And I've seen that recently with people, like with this whole Y2K, more
yeah.
90s, end of 90s vibe that people have been exploring,
Yeah.
because they're like, hey, I do 3D and I enjoy Y2K. How about I just bring those stickers and put them on the characters? Or I love doing typographic posters, but I also enjoy a lot like medieval calligraphy type of things, but I want to do it modern. You put it together and you're already building something.
Mm,
And that's where it feels authentic. It feels authentic when you bring the things that you, I would say the easiest step to try is bringing things that you enjoy, that little interest that you have about something that you're very passionate about, that you know every little detail about it, bring it on to the other type of thing, your profession as a
mhm.
designer, and you're gonna figure out that there are very neat ways that only you understand how to connect. Um, an example, I'm gonna use myself as an example. Sorry about that.
Sure.
I got
No, go for
into
it.
I got into I love Warhammer, and I recently got into painting the miniatures.
Very
But
cool.
I love this stuff, right? And I decided like, oh, I know Figma, I know about design systems too. So how about I just try to do something with the whole idea of customizing your little character onto a digital a
Mm,
piece of software that doesn't involve code but works like design systems. And I got something very particular and unique, and helped me also develop a bunch of skills. And it got my voice through. It's what I love. It's the things that I love from my profession and my hobby, for example. I think
yeah.
that that could be like the best way to approach it.
Yeah. I love this aspect of passion because I talk about this a lot, and
Hmm.
it's, I really get unhappy, I think, when I see a lot of people just chasing a trend, because they're not long lasting. And so I love that you have brought up and answered the question this way, which is directly related to passion. I mean, I
Hmm.
even talk and teach this way with people who are trying to get into something like print on demand, which is somewhat design adjacent, even though they may not necessarily be graphic designers.
Hmm.
I say and preach the same thing. If you're going to try to chase a trend that has potential sales, but you don't know about it, it will be difficult to compete with someone who's passionate about it. So
Yeah.
if you're passionate about Warhammer, if you're passionate about D&D, if you're passionate about
Hmm.
manga, that's probably the area, the subset of print on demand audience that you should target because you're
Hmm.
passionate about it. And I love that directly applied to this, that will allow you to stand out because it's exactly what you said. It's combining things that maybe otherwise are not normally together, right? We might call that something like surrealism, which usually will apply things together that don't necessarily happen. You know what I mean? And so I
Hmm.
think that this idea that you've proposed of bringing the two passions together that may otherwise seem unrelated can, one, give you some really cool projects, I think, for your
Yeah.
portfolio, and also just make you stand out, you know? So I don't know, does that sound about right? Did I synthesize what you
Yeah.
said
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, agree. And part of what I also use as my guidance when picking up projects is like, if if you're not gonna go all in, like, don't even try it, right? Like, if you're not putting all your skills and as much as you can into doing something and making sure that it's the best that you can do it, don't even try it, because then you're just gonna do something halfway, and
Mm,
halfway is neither good nor bad. In that case, why even try?
yeah.
So at least this passion guides you towards that, doing it as much as you can.
Yeah. So on this same, now that we've kind of entered the conversation of curating or curation and trying to figure out what we want to show, I think we have some good ideas now, or we've given people some good ideas for how they can create some things. You had this kind of concept of edginess that you talked a little bit about, and how
Yeah.
it can strengthen and make you stand out. And I think part of that is what you just mentioned, which is just do something 100%. Don't go halfway. Don't do 70%. If you're not going to go 100%, then don't pursue that thing. But I kind of want to know like what you edginess to you may mean different to me. So I kind of
Yeah,
want to know what does that mean to you? So you can start with defining that. And then how does that strengthen your personal brand without alienating potential clients?
yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to start with a definition of edginess and then talk about how it can be a strength.
Yeah, I think edginess is not like the edgelord type of thing where you just meme things, and like being edgy would be like having an opinion that cuts through some assumptions from people around you.
Okay.
In some cases, like what what I think is like the closest one was again like the thing within product design. Like, how do you bring an edge to that? Like, stop talking like everybody's talking about themselves. Stop using Inter, right? The Inter font is everywhere. So why would you want to go with the same flow as everybody keeps doing?
Mm,
The edge means just go against the grain. Just try to understand the pattern within the place that you're trying to build your portfolio, and have a voice, have some dissent,
mm,
have make it um like voice show that you are not entirely satisfied by following the trends that exist within the
yeah.
Inter font, for example. I just cannot see it anymore. Using always the black font on top of a white background and doing everything very clean in product design is already kind of super boring, and it doesn't have any edge. If I want to have some edge, I should be doing it completely, probably the opposite or a completely different direction. So
Sure.
edge means pretty much just try to make sure that
Against the
you're not
grain.
fulfilling
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, yeah, against the status quo, or at least
Yeah.
perhaps different, I think. So
Hmm.
then the fear, I think, I'm
Hmm.
not necessarily playing devil's advocate here. I can hear the voices and the complaints and the people in the back saying this is, well, if I do that, and I mean, how do I not, if I do the edginess, knowing that this other stuff is quite popular and lots of people get hired,
Hmm.
like how do I do that without, like I said, alienating myself, ostracizing these potential clients, which I already have my own kind of answer to that, but I would love to know
Hmm.
what your kind of supportive thinking in taking the more edgy approach is, because that's there's issues with that question when people ask that question, of course, but I think it's a valid one to ask, which is like, why, how do I do the edginess without like just never getting any clients?
Yeah. In that sense, yeah, like it's a leap. I would say that there's the moment to start experimenting with this. But what's the benefit of having that authenticity and that edge is that it's gonna eventually it will take a little bit of time, but I think it will drive you towards the clients that you want and the teams that you
Mm,
want to work in. So it's a good way of it will save you so much time in filtering the clients or the companies that you have to apply to, and it just if you can curate yourself in a way that matches better with the dream client or the dream
sure,
job, I
sure.
think it will eventually pay off. I think, yeah, it's a bit, yeah, yeah, just go be yourself and get the clients that you want. It's not that easy, but it's a road. It's how you build your brand. It's how you discover also what's your tone of voice and your style, your skills, and eventually it can catch on.
Mm.
But I would say that it's not entirely like, yeah, go for it, drop your clients, and you're tired of that client. You want to do some music posters for a band. Yeah, just drop it. Not exactly.
Yeah, I think the question is multifaceted, and there's issue with parts of the question because it comes back to our original idea and statement about kind of just chasing trends. So then my rebuttal
Mhm.
to the first part of the question would be like, well, that means that you're trying to capture clients and do work that everybody else is doing
True.
that you probably don't like, right? So that's issue
Mhm.
number one, is you're trying to jump into the lake that has the potential clients for a particular style that you're not even passionate about. So that's
Mhm.
issue number one. Now, I think the overlying question slash issue is definitely the more valid one, which is this idea of niching, right? So it's just all over the place, right? And I got to niche down on my thing. I got to niche down on my style. I got to only master poster design. I got to only master branding, and I don't do any other, and that will separate me as a specialist. So you
Hmm.
have gurus on one side preaching that, then you have gurus on the other side preaching no, if you want to do whatever, like you can, like you don't have to just niche down. Like you can do multiple things, but like you still have to be known. Maybe you're known for your style instead, or something like that. That
Hmm.
one's a much more complicated one to narrow down. But I think the normal structure is uh, every kind of design versus specialist design, and that's probably what someone means when they say well, I can't really be edgy or I don't want to be edgy because it'll ostracize these clients. It's probably attached to this larger idea of, well, I don't even if I narrow myself down to this, which is just web design or just poster design or whatever it is,
Hmm.
and then I try to be edgy, now I'm two pieces down the funnel, down the ladder, and I'm worried. I think that's what it is. It's all just worried. So my follow-up question to you after that monologue,
Hmm.
which I'm sorry about, is what do you think about this having to niche down on a specific style and service versus the idea that it's like just do what you want to do if you want to do multiple things? That's the only way I can really ask that question.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big one. Like that's very hard, and I think it also has to come to the person working within those frames. I feel through some friends, I know that they've been doing whatever they're doing as a freelance for more than 10 years, and they
Mm,
absolutely love it. And some other people have that I've met, they've also been jumping across different styles, different areas of design, and dedicating their time in some other ways. So the only way to know is also to test it yourself. You would discover that it is also different approaches. You figure out that probably, yeah, in your head, yeah, I want to be hired based on that. That would be my dream, right? Like I want to be hired only for my style, so that if a big brand's gonna come to me, they want what Juan Felipe does, and that's
yeah,
like the what I have in my head as a goal.
the ultimate
But
goal. Yeah.
eventually you think about it and it's like, yeah, that means that uh, you have to take care as a freelancer, you have to take care of these other things, and
Mm,
maybe you're gonna get tired of doing always the same thing because everybody's calling you to do the same type of media when you want to start evolving probably towards a different technique. And that's
yes.
gonna happen there. Maybe when you're in one side you want something from the other. So
Mm,
it's always nice to start where you really like it, where you feel comfortable, and when you feel that it's time to approach it differently, you're already going to have a lot of skills. You've already been down the funnel. You're already a specialized designer within the niche, and you know that you
yeah.
can expand a little, for example, or you know that you can close down a little and make it extra um, exclusive.
Yeah.
It takes time and it's very hard.
Yeah.
It depends on the person, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I like it in the structure that you've put it though is kind of more goal based. And that's probably not a narrative that many people are used to. I think it really truly is this side versus this side, feeling like you're locked to either one.
Hmm.
But I do like how you said as the ultimate goal. Like, yeah, obviously the ultimate goal would be to get hired on style no matter what the
Hmm.
project is, right? So my particular style in my personal and freelance work is strictly vintage pretty much. I don't really
Hmm.
take any products unless it's going to be a more Victorian hand lettered piece or it's going to be wood etched illustration or something.
Hmm.
And that's also my ultimate goal. I really, I guess, don't necessarily care if it's lettering versus illustration versus a website even as so long as it's going to be vintage. I think I would rather get hired for the style.
Yeah.
But I recognize that as I was building that, the most of what I was actually doing was either like etched tattoos and like little lettering pieces, and I just had to be okay with that. Not that
Yeah.
it's like my favorite thing to do, right? But the style. So I already had half of it, and I think that's
Hmm.
like if you're watching and or listening and you don't even have that half, then you're going to get there based on the tips that we've talked about already. But you at least already have half of it, and then you work to that ultimate goal, which is like, okay, well now I can be hired for an album cover perhaps, and then maybe now I can be hired for a poster design, and then now I can be hired for a full like kind of branded event or whatever it is you want, and
Hmm.
then now you have a larger repertoire of work for you to showcase. So I like the idea of it being more goal structured as opposed to locking yourself to this or the other. And I like how you talked about it kind of like a rubber band too. It's like, well, maybe you start leaning more towards uh, doing so many things in the one style and you miss just working on this one thing
Yeah.
that you could do really
Hmm.
well. But then when the rubber band stretches to there, you say, dang, I'm doing this one thing 100 times. It'd really be nice to move over to that. So I get it. It kind of ebbs and flows. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was in market. So I was doing product design in the very beginning of my career, and I did it for a while. Then I said, "Oh, I want to focus again into brand." I did a bit of brand. Then I jumped into marketing for like almost 4 years, and it's like, "Oh man, I miss product." So again, I went back to product, and I'm a little bit away from branding now and marketing. And I'm already catching on. Oh, this is what I like about product. In a few years, maybe I'm gonna say, "Hey, maybe it's brand. Maybe I'm just gonna go all in on illustration." I don't know, but at
Mm.
least I've gathered. I've managed to practice in some other aspects so that I just keep
Yes.
trying to expand.
Yes. Okay. So I think this has been extremely helpful. I would like you to talk a little bit about what people can expect in our kind of upcoming portfolio review,
Hmm.
portfolio structure kind of guidance that you're going to be putting on. I won't talk too much about dates or details because all that stuff is going to be down in the description for you all. Also, if you're watching after March, this part doesn't really
Hmm.
apply. So feel free to go to the next episode of the podcast. But for those of you who are watching, that want to get in on this portfolio review, which I think is going to be just an absolute masterclass. Juan, if you wouldn't mind, just maybe talk us through a little bit of what people can expect to get from you in this, yeah, basically in this class.
Yeah, what we're gonna do is we're gonna receive some portfolios. I would like to see some portfolios, maybe a group of pieces. What do I mean? Like not only one poster, but if you've done a different set of posters, or
Mm,
uh, it's fine if you send us like a package of files if you don't have a proper portfolio or a URL. As long as there are like multiple things, I think we can extract as much insights as possible. If you have a group of projects, a group of files within a project, and yeah, we're gonna go through these portfolios. We're gonna discuss them on the video, and we're going to be talking about how to make it easier for you to encase your like to put into a stream of thought and gather your ideas into
mm,
how to improve your brand, how to be more authentic. Like I feel that authenticity also comes with being shy about showing or talking well about your skills. So that would be one aspect, and also I will be giving some tips on how to properly curate better the things that you're looking into, like
yes.
in design, how to get better taste, which is like a little bit fuzzy, but it can also help everybody into learning and expanding their skills to apply into their portfolio. And yeah, we're gonna go through a few portfolios and cases and just discuss in terms of brand and in terms of technical skills, technical quality, or this type of explorations.
Perfect. Okay, so everyone that's watching or listening and super interested in that, I encourage you to check out the link to where you can submit that, along with the page where you can sign up to make sure you're included. All the details are going to be on that one page. We'll do our best to make sure we can get, as you just mentioned, you said you're okay with kind of more like a package of files, which I would assume basically just needs to be a Google Drive link, because otherwise it perhaps might be too
True.
big. But
Mhm.
if you have like your own website already, or I mean, Notion is free. You could pop something up on
Mhm.
Notion, share a Notion link. For those of you who didn't know that, you can start Notion, put your graphics up on there, type some stuff up, go to publish, and you can have a live published version of your Notion. that you can share with us. We'll try to put all those details down in the description. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for everyone. So in closing, I want to thank everyone for watching and listening. Thank you so much for joining this call, by the way. This was such an awesome opportunity to learn about portfolio and just like being being more authentic and curating, and the discussion on AI, which was super interesting. So if you've been watching and you've had a question, please comment down below, because maybe that's more information Juan can go into. Maybe that's a video we could make. We don't know unless you go and comment it down. I'm sure he'd be glad to know that. I'd be glad to know too. If you're curious or just confused or you need help, we can give you more links on where to go to get more help. And we'll make sure to include all of those down in the description. So thank you all again for watching, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye.